Welcome. In this video, I am going to share with you why I believe I am perfectly positioned to build the world's top talent company. And I'm going to do so by sharing you my story. If you haven't watched this really famous movie, Slumdog Millionaire, I believe that it's written for me to build this company. And I want to share with you why. And if you haven't watched the movie, let me tell you a little bit about this movie that you should actually watch because it's amazing. And this movie is actually, it's called Slumdog Millionaire, and we'll put a link to the movie here. And it's a story about this little boy who was born and raised in the slums of India, one of the big, in Mumbai in India. And I mean, my guy grew up playing in trash. And long story short, when he turns 18 years old, he gets selected to be in I Want to Be a Millionaire's version of the Indian show. And he ultimately ends up winning. But the problem was that no one thought, or at least the host and the owner of the show thought he had cheated. There was no way this 18-year-old kid that was born in the slums can actually know the answers to this hard questions and become a millionaire. And the movie kind of goes back from the time of when he's sitting in the chair making and answering those questions to all the different life experiences that he went through to help him answer a question. Like, I give you an example. They talk about a question that's like, which president is in the U.S. $100 bill? And this is in India, right? So like, how would you know? How would a really broke kid from the slums know what is the name of the president that was there? And it goes back and gives flashbacks of stories of this American tourist gave him $100 and that he gave this to a kid who was blind, and then the kid that was blind was like, how do I know this is really $100 bill? And then the kid gave him the test and said, is it Benjamin Franklin? And ultimately, because of those life experiences, he knew the answers. Now, without going into the movie, you should definitely watch it. I truly think that resonated with me because I truly think that my journey and my story is very, very unique. And I'm willing to bet that you have your unique story too. And that you are also destined, and it's written for you to do something amazing with your life. In fact, I am obsessed with helping people reach their full potential. This is why I became a career coach, which is now why I help career coaches build their business. Why I love pouring into my team and love having a big team is because I am obsessed with the concept of helping people reach their full potential. And a reason why I'm sharing this and I'm going back into my story and I want to share this with you is not because I'm actually ego driven and love to talk about my story. In fact, I don't think I've ever documented how I look at my upbringing and how I actually think it's actually one of the best upbringings someone can have, even though by a lot of measurements, it's very tragic and there's a lot of ups and downs. And I'm willing to bet that your life, if you look back, it has prepared you for the future. And if it's up to you if you take advantage of it or not. So as I mentioned, I was born in Colombia, top 1%. Wealthiest families, right? Country clubs, private schools, all of the above. And my dad died out of a sudden. If you think about he's healthy today, within a week later, he was in the hospital and he died of pancreatitis, which even to this day, it's very, very small survival rate. And this led to create a domino effect because what happened after my dad died, he was running a family business, third generation family business, that ultimately went bankrupt a couple of years after my father died. And this business has been in my family for over 50 years. This business actually is one of the largest businesses in the city at that time, having hundreds of employees. And no one ever expected to this business to go bankrupt. And I'm not saying it only went bankrupt because my dad died. I think there was also some economic factors. A lot of the manufacturing went to China and so on. But regardless, our family did a terrible job planning for this. My dad did a terrible job planning for the day that he was no longer there, meaning that my mom, who never worked a day in her life, didn't have a lot of savings, didn't have a lot of things. In fact, the only thing that he left my mom at that time was an apartment, which she couldn't even sell until I turned 18 years old. So she had an asset that she couldn't even use. But long story short, that led to my mom making one of the bravest decisions that to this day don't understand why she did it because it wasn't logical. She decided to take me and her $2,000 in 2 suitcases to the United States to pursue the American dream. And my mom went from never working a day in her life. Think about her being a stay-at-home wife, country club, going to coffee, going to lunch with her friends, spa day, right? I had a nanny. I had everything taken care of. To going to America and having to work less than minimum wage, 7 days a week, 12-hour days for over 15 years straight without ever taking a vacation, all so that she can provide for me, all so that I can have an opportunity to the American dream, which to me, I think is important to understand that even though since I was really young, 8, 9 years old, I was been at home alone. I learned to cook and clean, and I had to essentially be independent because we didn't have any family here. All of our family was back in Colombia. It was beautiful because I learned work ethic. I learned so many of the principles that are required to build a business, through seeing my mom at work, her not because of her words, but because of her actions. And I think that's really important because it's shaped who I am today, and the work ethic that I have is definitely learned from her. Now, what's interesting here, right? It's like, because I was born with money and I remember having a lot of those luxuries, right? And then growing up in the United States from since I was 8 years old to where I am now, 33 years of age, right? Without having money, with going to public schools, with essentially living with my mom paycheck to paycheck for the longest time, essentially, then I understood both sides of what it felt like to have money, what it felt like to be broke, and I understood that both were hard. And I understood the challenges that came with both, obviously, and that definitely shapes the way I look at the world. And as I dive into that, right, I think that's really important because of my mom working, it created a level of independence for me. And I never felt that I can, even at a very young age of like 10 years old, never felt like I can ask my mom for money. How can I dare to ask my mom for money when she's already working and killing herself and having multiple jobs, whatever was required to pay rent, to get food, right? To cover my school expenses, uniform and clothes. I didn't feel like I could. And that led to me to think about possibilities of how I can make money, right? Because I knew that it's possible. I knew that you could start a business. I knew, right, that that's the way to generate wealth. So from a very young age, I had this entrepreneurial spirit of looking and identifying to problems and finding them solutions. And so my first business started when I was like 9 years old. And there was this people who there was this grass like by a YMCA that people used to play soccer behind my house. And I would see that they would come after work every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday from 5 to 7 p.m. These adults will come in and play soccer. And I realized that a lot of them were changing from their work clothes into their soccer clothes right after work. And I realized none of them had water. Very few of them had water, right? And there was a supermarket walking distance. And I remember saying, okay, what if I go and I sell water? And I remember that at one point we had some water bottles in my house. So I took them out there and I just say, hey, they're $1 a piece. And I just sold out on the first day. And I realized, I was like, wow, well, I can do this all over again. I can go use this money. So I stole the water bottles from my refrigerator from my mom, right? I guess not stealing, they're mine too. Realized that I sold them, realized that now I have money. I think I had collected like $5, $6. And at that time, each water bottle was less than 25 cents. It was super cheap, maybe even 10 cents. This is back, when I was in 2000, in 1999, right? And this allowed me to just continue to sell water and Gatorades to these adults. And at a really young age, 10, maybe 10 years old, maybe 11 max, I was already, making around $20 to $30 a week, which allowed me to like have a little spending money here and there. And this led to like different businesses, like having a car wash business, selling Lacoste polos. Remember Lacoste with the alligators? I would get them from my mom's friend who would go to Peru a lot, and she would bring me suitcases. I would sell them in high school. I sold Air Force Ones. I saw Universal and Disney tickets. I just became like a hustler. I sold everything you can think of except for drugs, probably. I just never had drugs. That wasn't my thing. My mom scared me to death. And I think a lot had to do with the fact that for over 9 years, our immigration situation was not good. Was, I would say, in limbo per se. And because of that, I always was very scared that if I ever got in trouble or anything, that it wasn't like, I wasn't like a regular kid. I wouldn't just go to jail. I would just get deported. And so because of that, right, I was very walking the straight line and never deviated from those stuff. And I also walked with fear. I always knew that I couldn't get in a fight or I couldn't get in trouble in school. I always had that fear if I got pulled over from a cop, that it was going to be bad news for me. And that also shaped the way I look at the world as well. Now, fast forward to this, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to go to college, right? Like there wasn't clarity on a path for me to go to college. So I didn't do a lot of the things that people did, like study for their SAT or things like that. So when I did find out that I was finally able to go to college, I went to community college. I was, throughout life, I've always been very hardworking, but very bad at taking tests. To this day, I still don't know how to spell properly. And I'm probably the only best-selling author that that can't spell, or at least that would admit it in publicly and have multiple times. But what I'm saying is I went to community college first, and then that led me to transfer to University of Central Florida. And even during those times, there's a couple of things here that are a theme. And the theme is I was never the smartest. I was never the one with the most resources, but I was really good at a couple of things. Having a strong work ethic and building relationships. And this theme throughout my life, now I see it very clearly as I think back, wasn't that clear to me then. I didn't realize that that was my competitive advantage. Every time that I was in a position where I had to outwork people and build genuine relationship with people, that I will succeed. And if I'm not in a position where everything depended on me passing a test, then that I would fail. And so I say that because I want you to try to understand patterns in your life of what's your competitive advantage. Now, as I keep telling you this story, I always, at this point, I had identified that I wanted to be successful, right? That going to college and getting a job wasn't going to just be enough. That I wanted to ultimately either start my own business, legitimate business, not just selling water or selling Universal tickets or selling Lacoste shirts, but actually legit start like an LLC, a business, and I wanted to do that. So when I went to school, I had realized by listening to tons of audiobooks, because at this time I didn't read, but I had listened to every audiobook that the public library had, is that most CEOs and founders of companies knew two things. And one was sales, and the other two were dreamers. So there were dreamers and then there were doers, but a lot of them understood sales. And so what I did is that I was going to the College of Business, and I decided to major in two different majors: management with a track of entrepreneurship, and then marketing with a track of professional selling, because I knew that if I can learn how to build a business and be a leader like a manager, relationships, and then do sales, right? Then I will be able to build any business, because nothing happens without if something is not sold, right? And if you watch my first video and I'll reference back on how I build my career coaching business and how we do over $500,000 a year on autopilot, you see that we actually have to start with sales. But anyways, I graduated with that, and I was involved in a lot of student organizations, which again played to my strengths because it allowed me to be a leader and it allowed me to build more relationships. And that led to me building relationships with Dr. Calvin Williams, and we'll put a link to his LinkedIn here. Shout out to Dr. Calvin Williams, with different professors at the university, and just really building relationships with professors, faculty, and the university. And even though I was not the best student, I was really good at building those relationships, which then led to referrals to organizations and companies. And that ultimately led to joining the professional selling program that led to me having multiple job offers. So when I graduated college, me, Daniel, 2.9 GPA, this kid with a 2.9 GPA was able to graduate with more than a handful of job offers that I could choose from, even though most people weren't graduating with jobs, even if they had a higher GPA or even went to a better school. So out of all the jobs, I decided that I was in defense of starting my own business, which at the time was called U-Bike, and at the same time going into this management training program at PepsiCo. And I ultimately went to my entrepreneurship professor, who was now an angel investor into different startups, and I said to him, what do you think I should do? And he said, hey, Daniel, the best way to learn any goal, and I'll never forget this because I say this quote to this day, is to learn from someone who's done it before. And if you truly want to build a business and you want to build a Fortune 500 company in one day, then you need to know how those companies are ran. So I would advise you, go work for corporate America for 5 years and then get out and build your own thing. And I did just that. If there's one thing I am, is that I work ethic, I'm coachable, and I love relationships. So now we're building this trend. So I start at PepsiCo, and let me tell you, this management training program was very difficult. It was one of the most difficult ones that you can imagine because they want you to learn the business from the ground up. Like they're looking for you, like seriously, to drive the truck. To those trucks are like they look like U-Haul where you're driving to that goes to the stores. Well, that's one I had to drive for almost 9 months to a year. And I had to wake up like at midnight or 2 a.m. in the morning to be at the stores around 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. and then work 12 hours, put in chips, Doritos, Tostitos, Fritos, all the Eatos, right, into the shelves so that I can learn what is the job of the people that I will be managing when I become a district manager. And it was really tough. But I understood. I didn't know better. I didn't have anybody that I knew that had, was a professional in corporate America. I didn't have those relationships. So I thought, hey, this is corporate America. This power of naive, that I was naive enough to think like, hey, like, okay, this is it. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. And so then I became a district manager. And I remember, so I'm like a year into PepsiCo now. I passed my district manager certification and I'm sitting in the room. And this is essentially how I got into career coaching, right? It was all luck, right? Sitting in the room. And all the directors, the vice president of the region is all there. They're all saying, they're going over all like kind of like, this is like mid-year review of where we are in the region, what we need to do better to accomplish our goals. And then a topic came in of recruiting. And the director of HR, I believe, this guy, his name was Larry, said, hey, we are below our target in recruiting for our management training program for the next year's cohort. And I remember that their target's 20. So they wanted to get 20 people a year for this management training program, the one that I was just on. And I think at this point, they're halfway through the year and they're at 3. And they're really, really behind. And I'm in the back of the room, right? Like, this brand new kid. I don't even know why I was even in the room, right? And I said, hey, I'm sorry. This might be a very silly question. But how can you help me understand how is it that a company like PepsiCo, right, has a hard time to recruit 20 people a year for this amazing program that pays extremely well. It gives you a massive amount of experience. And you're recruiting at 10 of the most prestigious universities in the Southeastern United States. Like, and again, it's naive. How is it? Like, I was in college less than a year ago. I knew what it felt like to want to get a job. I knew all my friends struggling to get a job. And here it is, one of the, Fortune 50 company, one of the best management training programs in the world, telling me you can't find 20 people. And it just didn't make sense in my head. And it's probably not making sense in your head if you are a job seeker. And if you're a career coach, then you know that exactly what I'm talking about. And they're like, you know what, Daniel? Here's the reason is that we get tons of applications. We get thousands of applications. We're not finding the right talent. We're not finding the quality applications. We need more people like you, people who are not afraid to wake up early, people who are not afraid to put in the work, people who are not just thinking of tomorrow and that are not lazy, right? So they go on to this thing of what they're looking for. And I said, hey, I know a bunch of people like me, right? I can help you with this, right? I can go back to my university. I have great relationships, with the associate director of career services, with all the professors in the College of Business, with the student organizations that I was part of, like with this, all these relationships that I have built. I'm like, hey, I got this. Like, I can do this. And I remember they're like, sure, Daniel, like, go ahead, you can do that. But I think it was more of the sure, go ahead, try, good job, kid, good job, rookie. They didn't really think that I was going to do what I was going to do, right? And that was essentially, that fall semester just hit the University of Central Florida hard. I went, did an info session at the career services, spoke at every student organization in the College of Business, spoke inside of in the classes of professors, build a partnership with career services to do workshops on different things, and essentially just put in, did the career fair, did interviews. Long story short, fast forward, naive enough that I can solve this recruiting problem for PepsiCo led to, at the end of the year, 8 of the 20 coming from the University of Central Florida, which was not a core school, which HR was not focusing because they were too focused on University of Florida, University of Alabama, University of Miami, University of Georgia, and little here UCF with Daniel, a brand new guy who's been in the company less than a year, gets 8 out of the 20 people. And plus, it's not my choice who gets the job or not. I did the first round of interviews, but the second round and final round was by the vice president and the directors, which every all university did the same final round the same day. So it wasn't like they were handpicking, like I was just cheating the system. Like I didn't have anything to do with it. And that led to making UCF a core school. And then I ran campus recruiting for PepsiCo, not only just for Frito-Lay, but for PepsiCo for a couple of years then. And that's kind of how, again, perfect, me being in that room, me seeing, going back and having the entrepreneurial mindset of seeing a problem, finding a solution, and then just jump in there thinking, being naive enough to think that I can solve that issue allowed me to look at the problem from a different perspective and be able to find that solution. And that was the introduction to my career coaching journey, because now, if you see, I'm learning all these key things from understanding how career services works, because I was really close and mentored by the associate director who became the director of career services at FSU, to then learning what Fortune 50 companies look like in recruitment, especially right out of college, because I ran it, right? I ran it, been there, done that, did the first round of interviews, knew what interviewing was like, knew how the applicant tracking system works, knew all of this. And then that led me to the next phase where I was like, man, like I always wanted to be a public speaker. I always wanted to help people and motivate people and be a motivational speaker, right? And this is my opportunity to help people not only get a job at PepsiCo, but how do I help people just get a job? Because the more I read and the more I learn, I was realizing that a lot of people were graduating college without a job. Or they were graduating college and they were getting job offers in which they were making less money than what they were making when they were a server. And it's what I called, I didn't call it, it's what's called the server trap. And so people wouldn't take the professional job they got after getting their 4-year degree and ended up continuing to be a server, because in Orlando, servers make $60,000, $70,000. But back then, those individuals were making, out of college, making $30,000, $40,000. And so to me, I became passionate about trying to solve this problem and thinking and being naive enough to think that I can solve it. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think that happens a lot when we're younger, but as we get older, we just get beat up so much that we lose some of that innocence and the naivety that becomes such a superpower. But long story short, I continued to get promoted at PepsiCo. And I was now in charge of the Southeast United States when it came to CVS, Walgreens, and Target for Frito-Lay, which is over $100 million of sales a year that I was managing. This kid, 2, 3 years, 4 years out of college, is managing a $100 million portfolio for a Fortune 50 company, overseeing over probably 5,000 stores. Was incredible. And I still love to speak. And so I started going and speaking at different universities in the Southeast as I was traveling to those locations to meet with my clients and the individuals who worked at PepsiCo or Frito-Lay in those cities. And that led to me speaking to over 200 places for free and mentoring dozens of students all for free and saying, hey, this might be something. Like, what if I did this full time? And so that kind of like led to like understanding like, hey, there's an opportunity here. And my wife, who was kind of very different to me, she went to University of Florida, which is arguably a better school, went to a harder major like finance, more technical major, higher GPA. She also struggled to get a job out of college, even though she's like the perfect employee, and struggled to get a job within her major. And so she's like, babe, out of all the crazy ideas that you come up with, this one is the one I actually think I wish I had when I had it. It's something I actually think you should double down on it. And with that being said, I came to a conclusion that I had some big goals for myself. I have some big goals. If you know me, maybe I'll do another video later on about walking you through my vision board and my goals and the way I look at it. And I realized that there was no way that I can reach my goals, right, of starting a Fortune 500 company, hitting this net worth of 35 million by 35, doing all these things, and still building my career at PepsiCo. I just knew that at this point, I either had to change my goal or I had to change my job. And May 5th of 2018, I decided to change my job and decide to leave PepsiCo to try to start my own thing. But it wasn't just like, okay, I'm going to make this jump. At this time, I had built a relationship with this guy who owned a staffing agency. And he knew my plan. He knew that I wanted to build and become a public speaker. And he said, hey, Danny, if you come with me, I'm building this fast-growing staffing agency. I'll help you build your business if you come and help me build mine for a couple of years. And I'll let you transition out. And I felt like it was a perfect way to mitigate this risk. And so I did that. I left the security of PepsiCo. I decided to go work for this guy in a house, right, out of his living room, with another friend of mine to build this staffing agency. And again, wasn't what I expected. And it was kind of essentially like, I was like, I couldn't believe I had left my career to go work here, and it was not what I expected. But you know what? Again, as I look back to it, those situations of leaving my PepsiCo job to go work at the staffing agency that ended up not being nowhere what I thought was, it wasn't what I was promised, and all this also has been perfect. Going back to the Slumdog Millionaire, that unique experience of being able to work in a staffing agency for 6 months, from learning from the recruiting side all the way to essentially trying to get clients to join, has allowed me to also now learn the staffing side of recruitment, of what staffing agencies look like, how their margins work, how do they find talent, how do they find, how do they get companies, and so on. But then after 6 months, me and the founder of that staffing agency, didn't align on the way of running the business, and so we went our separate ways. Essentially, I went to go fully focus on mastering college to career and to go be a public speaker. And so I shared that part of the journey because it was tough, right? Because I had this great job. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to go and speak at all the universities that I used to speak with, all those universities that would always want me to come back and speak. I'm going to go and tell them like, hey, like I want to come back and speak, but now this time I charge. This is my full-time job. It's called Mastering College to Career. And so I did just that. And man, oh man, little did I know that all those universities that were willing to have me go speak for free no longer had a budget whenever I wanted to charge. All those universities that welcomed me in no longer thought I was good enough because I didn't work at PepsiCo. And that was a hard reality. And I share that because it was a kick in the gut, because you're like, man, did I make the right choice? After all that, even though I have the success track, even though I've mentored and I have testimonials of people, even though I now have really mastered my speech, these people are not willing to pay for it. And I remember then I was then told like, hey, Daniel, like I think what the problem is that, if you want to be a public speaker and you want to be taken seriously, you need to have a book. And again, how naive I am, and I know I'm willing to put in the work. I go ahead and spend 6 months writing this book, right? Writing this book on step by step on how to get a job, and it's called Mastering College to Career. And then I'm like, okay, now I got to go market this book. So I went back to all the universities and said, hey, this semester, right, this fall semester, this is now we're talking about fall 2019, I'm willing to go back and speak for free, because all I am looking for is that if your students like it, they can go buy my book and I can monetize it that way. And so I then, within a couple of weeks of launching this book, went and spoke to over 25 different places, drove my book to become a bestseller on Amazon during that fall semester, right? And sold some books, which you're like, great, you did it, you made it, Daniel. But the reality, what they don't tell you when you write a book, is that most of the money actually doesn't go to the author. It actually goes to Amazon for selling it. It goes to Amazon for publishing it and printing it. And then you might get a couple of bucks, $3 to $4, depending on how much you're selling the book for, you get yourself. And all that work that I wrote it, I spent to write it, all that work I go in and spoke for free, all that for a couple of $1,000s. I think I might have made $10,000, $15,000 for about 7 months worth of work. And if you're going from making 6 figures to now making less than $10,000 in 3 months, you're just like, ouch, right? And that was kind of like a hard reality. Then they're like, you know what, Daniel? So then you learn from it, right? But then I was told that, hey, Daniel, like what you need to do is that you need to actually go into these organizations to pay to then speak in front of universities, and universities will book you. And so it's called APCA and NAPCA, and I go and I invest $15,000. This is fall of 2019. Again, I'm getting ready for that 2020 to be my best year to be a public speaker, to travel the United States, talking about my book, talking about how to get a job, right? And I paid $15,000 in this to go to this organization so that universities go to this event and they book you out for the whole new year. And I'm like, hey, that's the goal. This is my goal. And what happens in spring of 2020? right? COVID-19 hits. So all those universities who had committed to bring me to speak, who had agreed to pay me $3,000 to $4,000 to go speak at them, all canceled at me. All canceled because they no longer had a budget for speakers. All the classes were now online, and that investment, and I now felt like a failure again. But again, at that time, I felt like the failure, but as I look back at it, it was the biggest blessing that could have happened to me. Because then it forced me to pivot. It forced me to rethink and say, look, if I am driven by impact, if I am driven to want to help people get jobs, I had to rethink, is the book the best solution? And as I kind of think through this, right, and I was actually talking to someone on my team about this, is if I go to a university and I speak in front of 100 people, what percentage of those people do you think will walk away with the notes and go execute the strategy of what I said about how to go get a job? What percent of people are going to focus on, getting clarity on where they want to apply, applying the right way, networking, preparing for interviews the way I walked them through in that 1 hour speech? I don't know about you, but I'm willing to bet it's less than 5%. Maybe a lot of them have a lot of intentions, but a week after I leave that university, they won't even think about me and they will forget about me. No matter how good of a speaker it is. Look, I've paid to go to so many seminars, and myself, I've made that mistake. And so I say that because then that's where the book comes in. Because I thought, okay, if 2% of people actually go to a speech and make a change, so I'm only changing 2% of people's life, how many more lives change when I write a book? And I think that the book maybe increases that to about 10%. So 10% of people that read my book will actually go make the changes required to see a difference in their life. And I said, okay, how do we go from 2% to 10%? That's good, but I'm not happy with 10%. How do we go higher? And that's when we made this book, at this point, it was just me by myself, made this book into an online course. And that online course allowed to go deeper into the material that's here and allow our clients to then be able to go from 10% to 20%, right? And I think that to me is where I said, okay, how do I go higher? How do I continue to up the ante? How do I continue to deliver and increasing the percentage of people that are affected by it, which then led to the way that we do career coaching today, right? Because a lot of it's based still on this book. A lot of it's still based on what I learned as a job seeker in corporate America, in a staffing agency. All of those unique experiences that I lived through allowed me to come up with the thesis to then be able to say, okay, how do we put that into the strategy? How do we then put that into a program? And how do we elevate the way we deliver the program that allows us to scale? And I think that's the importance, because now everything that you can read in this book is built into what we call our accelerator, Opny Accelerator, because we now rebranded, and we now work with our clients from beginning to end. And there's a process. They're handheld. They're working with one of our coaches. We're helping them with their resume. We're dramatically increasing the chances of them getting that success to the point that if they don't, they get their money back. And so it created a win-win, and that led to us building one of the most successful career coaching businesses that there is right now, that individual coaches have. And that's where, to me, why I'm so passionate about career coaching, because I know the power of a good career coach can do in someone's life. The power of what a good mentor, a good coach, someone that cares about you and wants to see you succeed. And if they help you execute those strategies, because it's not knowledge this power, it's actionable knowledge this power, that's where it goes back to the core of what I'm about, which is helping people reach their full potential. It's a way of thinking, how do we dramatically increase the chances of opening a world of opportunity for millions, which is what Opny is all about. So long story short, this is my story, and it was a journey, because as you can see, if you go back to the old video where I actually share screenshots of my entrepreneurship journey of how much I was making each year, you can see the growth, but you can see that the first couple of years were very difficult. In fact, I went through my savings. I sold my 401k trying to go speak at those universities that ultimately ended up getting hit by COVID, right? At this time, I've gone in credit card debt. I can tell you how to build a successful career coaching business, not because of theory, but because I've been there, done that. I have the scars, the burns, the bruises, you name it, I have it. And that's the story, which now leads to where we are today. That's where we are today, where now we say, okay, how do we impact more? How do we help more and more people successfully reach their full potential and open a world of opportunity? Which is why last year I decided to say, okay, if I can make other career coaches successful, they can make their clients successful, I can create a ripple effect. We as an Opny and as an organization can create a ripple effect. And so last year we started working with career coaches and saying, hey, not holding back. Here's our game plan. Here's our strategy. Here's our standard operating procedures. Here's our script. Here's everything that you need to know. And we're going to help you execute it and implement it. And if you need help because there's a lot of administrative work that needs to be done here, we'll even help you with hiring a VA and placing them for you and training them for you so that you can build a business that's impactful, that's profitable, and that's scalable. And if that's you and if this story resonates with you at all, right? And you want to learn more about how we can help put our systems, our processes into your business so that you can help more people, then schedule a link below, because that's what we're here to do. And as we continue to build out, right, as the vision for Opny is that we want to build the world's top talent company. We want to build an organization that helps millions, if not billions of individuals reach their full potential. That they are working in a job that they're fulfilled, that they're making an impact, and that they're making a great income. And if you resonate with this story and you are a career coach and want to learn more about how to work with us, I just say, hey, let's schedule a call. Let's have a conversation to see if working together is a win-win. If there's one thing that I can tell you is that everything that we want to do with our clients, with our employees, with our shareholders or investors, right, is that we want to make sure everything we do is win-win. So I share all this story because I don't want this story actually to be about me. This actually, even though this video is my story and how I got to where I am now, in a sense, it's more actually about you. What are you meant to do? What are you trying to do with your world, with your life? And how can we help you? If that's you, I'll see you in the next story. Thank you so much for watching.